My dad struggled with mental illness and alcoholism, and my mom was a nurse. And so a lot of my growing up, my mom was taking care of my dad, which left me to kind of fend for myself. And I was overweight as a child as well. And so for me, it was a very rough home life. And then going to school, kids would ridicule me, and I felt like there was really no escape at all.
In elementary school, 4th and 5th grade, I started being bullied and teased for being girly.
I've struggled with self-confidence my entire life.
So they called me, and I answered the phone. It was the nurse, and she confirmed that my biopsy showed that I had cancer.
I was 17 years old and a senior in high school, and I lost my mother to a head-on collision car accident.
When I was little, there was a lot of abuse that began, kind of from my mother. Physical abuse, verbal abuse, mental abuse. There's a specific memory that I remember when I was a kid, and I remember asking her to pick me up. And my dad looked at her, and my dad said, "Can't you just love him?" And she quipped back at him really quickly, and she said, "You can't make me feel anything I don't want to." And from that moment on, everything I did, I just wanted her approval. I just wanted to feel loved.
So when I was about 14 years old, I tried to kill myself, and I wound up hospitalized for a while, which was difficult because then when I returned to school, I was labeled as crazy.
There are days of taking more than I can give. There are choices that I've made that I wouldn't make again.
Fast forward a few years, and I'm married, now have kids, and my husband had to leave on a 6-month tour. He was in the military. And at that point, I had to take care of a family all by myself.
I've had my share of laughter, of tears and troubled times, and this has been the story of my life. I've won, I've lost, I've got it right sometimes, but sometimes I did not.
I enjoyed things that were not as masculine as most guys would like. And so at the age of 12, I started living a closeted homosexual lifestyle by looking at pornography.
I found myself in a same-sex relationship that lasted for about 2.5 to 3 years.
From the time I was 4 to the time I was 8 years old, I was molested twice.
Life's been a journey. I've seen joy, I've seen regret. Oh, and you've been my God through all of it.
We can skip ahead a few years, and it's now the year of 2006, and I lost my father to cancer.
After a lot of verbal arguing and crying and just feeling completely lost and hopeless, I walked into an Orthodox rabbi's office, quite literally, tattoos out and everything, hands up and saying, "I need God right now. I am lost."
You were there when it all came down on me, when I was blinded by my fear and I struggled to believe. In those unclear moments, you were the one keeping me strong. This is how my story's always gone.
It started out just 1 time a day, but then it quickly grew to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 times a day, and it's something that consumed me. It's something that consumed my life.
It's 2014 and 2015, and the 2 brothers I do have left are both diagnosed with cancer. One is stage 3 and the other is stage 4.
I remember just this period of loneliness, and I remember this period of all of a sudden I started becoming really confused about who I was and my gender identity. And at that time I started experimenting.
I quickly just spiraled out of control into a deep and dark depression. Everything that I'm doing right now is leaving me broken and empty, and I knew I needed something different.
I have won, I have lost, I've got it right sometimes, but sometimes I did not. Life's been a journey. I've seen joy, I've seen regret. Oh, and you've been my God
that point that all of this shame and just began to set in, and I couldn't even look at myself.
I'm dying and screaming on the inside, and the outward was not reflecting on what was inside of me. I tasted freedom, but I wasn't experiencing it fully in my life.
Once I started playing music in front of people and performing on stage, music for me became a way that I would find my identity.
More constant than the stars up in the sky. All these years, all my life, I look back and I see you. Right now I still do, and I'm always going to. I have won, I have lost. I've got it right sometimes, but sometimes I did not.
And it wasn't until about 3 or 4 years ago that I actually began to transition that into finding my identity and my self-worth through who Jesus calls me to be as a person.
I had always had this vision of God as someone who sat up in heaven, waiting to judge and condemn me for every wrong thing that I had done. And man, did he have all the reason to do it.
Life's been a journey. I've seen joy, I've seen regret. Oh, and you've been my God through all of it. Oh, and you've been my God through all of it. Oh, and you've been my God through all of it.
I remember something in me just broke, and I just started crying, uncontrollable sobbing, and I said, God, I can't do this anymore. I'm living this lifestyle that I hate. I can't even look at me. I don't know if you can even look at me. I don't even know if you're hearing me right now.
That was a turning point in my life where I've been a Christian for a long time, but I never really sought God and what he had for my life. And there is where I learned that I can no longer control people. I can't control situations.
About 4 years ago, I was working at Starbucks down the street. I met this really sweet girl with blonde hair and blue eyes named Katie. And Katie said, my dad's a pastor. We have church down the road. Would you want to visit sometime? And at that time I was identifying as Jewish. But I've always had an open heart to all religions, and I said, yeah, sure, I'll stop in. And I was so incredibly moved by that one service that after 4 years and all of the things that happened to me in my life, I decided that when this rabbi had failed me yet again, I was going to return to the one place that I felt like I really found God, and that was Springwell.
Today, I'm now able to stand on stage in confidence, but in confidence because of who Jesus has called me to be as a person, and I can be confident through my music, sharing that story with people.
Oh, you've been my God through all of it. Oh, you've been my God through all of it. Oh, you've been my God.
I knew that I had to give this to God because it was out of my hands at that point. And I knew that I had to trust him that everything that I was going through, that he would bring me through it, and it would be for my good and for his glory.
I had never had this vision of God as someone who was right here in front of me, who was tempted in all things. And that gave me hope, because at the end of the verse it says, yet without sin. I mean, I can look back on my life and know that at the age of 5, when I prayed a prayer of salvation and cried out to God then, that he made me new that day.
And as clear as day, I heard the voice of God speak to me. And he said, it is going to be okay. And this supernatural peace hit the room. And I just knew.
I could feel him through all of that just saying, don't worry, I've got this.
I found that one of the most challenging things about being a Christian is trusting God. And trusting him through the valleys is really tough sometimes. But you persevere. That's what it's about. I have found through my faith freedom.
I have won, I have lost. I've got it right sometimes, but sometimes I did.
And all of the sudden, I realized I am Joshua, son of God. I'm not Joshua the liar. I'm not Joshua the manipulator. I'm not Joshua the homosexual. I'm not Joshua who is beaten, who is molested, who is abused, who is forgotten. I am Joshua, son of God, and nothing can strip me from that.
In trusting him, it's been, it really has been life-changing. It really has.